Isn't this so creepy? The change in tune. It's like she was hit with a mind control ray or something. Who is this lady? This isn't Marjorie. Give her back. Let's talk about something, guys. Ooh, wow. It feels like I'm back in like 2019 or something. You know what I mean? It feels like I'm back in 2019. Feel like I'm back in 2018, you know what I mean? Where we can just talk about how bad the Democrats are without, anything else really going on necessarily. I mean, like a little bit, but it's kind of like being back to normal type of politics. Biden said he would bring back normality, and I guess he's bringing back the normal Democrat ineptitude that we can talk about here on the channel. Now, for a long time on this channel, and for a lot of viewers that I've had here, we haven't talked that much about the Democrats, right? We talk a little bit about them, but typically when we talk about the Democrats, I usually give them a lot of praise, mostly for them it being just, not because they're necessarily that good, but because the Republicans are so bad that in comparison, they're basically like godsend, okay? Not completely, but like by a lot, all right? Because the Republicans are simply just that bad. With that being said, that doesn't mean that they're great or good even, that doesn't mean that they're your friends. Democrats, and I hope that I didn't give this impression to anybody. Democrats are not your friends. Democrats are politicians, okay? And politicians in this country are business people, and business people don't care about you, really. It doesn't matter who they are, from AOC to Hakeem Jeffries. They're not your friends. They could be nice people, they could be good people, but they're not your friends. All right. And at the end of the day, they're there for one thing, which is to keep their seat so they can keep making money and for a lot of them, make more deals with more corporations and lobbying firms to make even more money and be millionaires, multimillionaires by the time they leave office. OK, they're not your friends. Except for Bernie. He's my friend. Bernie is cool. He's not your friend. OK, he's still a politician guy at the end of the day. He really is. Right. He makes bad decisions, as anybody who's looked into his history knows, right? He's just like he's a cool guy. He's your grandfather, something like that. He's the cool grandfather, not really your friend. With that being said, the reason why I feel like I can talk about this now more holistically is because we have just normal things going on. It's not like Republicans trying to bring back like Nazi Germany by trying to build Austin-Birkenau. To put all like the trans people in, we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the debt ceiling, or as I like to call it, the cringe ceiling. Now, why do I call it that? Because it's funny. But another reason why I call it that is because it's stupid. But we'll get into it. Anyways, something that you may or may not have known a little bit about is that there are debt ceiling negotiations going on. There are deficit and debt ceiling negotiations going on, and the Republicans control the House of Representatives, which means, you didn't hear about a government shutdown, which means that the government came to a deal, which also means that poor people got screwed over. 99% of the time, if like Republicans control the House and there is no government shutdown, that means that poor people's lives got worse. All right. And we can talk about that in a moment, exactly what happened. But what did happen in the bill is that there were $136 billion in cuts that the Democrats and Joe Biden specifically approved to happen. Now, you may be wondering, you may be a little worried, especially people who know people or may be a little bit more financially constrained, that where these cuts came from. I will get to it. OK, but I would like to talk about something super quickly. OK, because I know some people are thinking about this. They're like, what the heck is going on? Maybe their eyes glazed over and they're about to click off the video. Don't click off just yet. Listen, let me tell you something. You may be asking yourself, Shark, what the heck is happening? And also, what the heck is a debt ceiling? So let's talk about it. In like many things in this country, the debt ceiling is uniquely American. What is the debt ceiling and why does it matter? Okay. As you know, we have debt, a lot of it. Okay. Like $31.38 trillion in debt at this moment in time by the writing of this article. And it's increased a lot since the start of the country. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit, because every country goes through something like this, but we do it in the dumbest way possible. Basically, here's how governments work a little bit, okay? You're just a very too broad, too just vague, but it'll work for this understanding idea of how governments work. politicians typically like government legislative bodies give the government the ability to do three things. Three things, very important. Three, remember, to tax. You all know about that, all right? And but something you may not know about if you don't live on an aircraft carrier is that they spend, okay? Definitely not on your like local infrastructure, but they do be spending, okay? But another thing that they do that's really important there is to borrow. Every country does these three things. They tax, they spend, and they borrow. And in every single country, the legislative body gives their government the ability to do these three things because it just seems like a really normal thing that every government will need to do in a globalized society, but like in a society kind of period to tax, to spend, and to borrow. That's how like the nation states work. All right. The problem is here in America, we gave 150 years ago when the government was becoming more complicated and every single monetary decision couldn't be handled by the House and Senate. Can you imagine if every single like money thing that the government does was handled by the House and Senate? We would literally get nothing done. It would be this country would have like exploded like 50 years ago. Okay. But we gave the government the ability to by itself tax mostly. And by itself, spend. But what we didn't do was give them the third thing, which is to, remember, borrow, which is super weird, isn't it? We don't give the country the ability to borrow like every other country is able to do to run a functioning country. Every company, like America, three companies in a trench coat. Anyways, my politics are so edgy and cool. They're so left wing and so wacky. What happened is that every single year we have to vote on the government or like however long we extend it, typically a year, the government to be able to borrow more. And if the government can't borrow more, then it can't make up the deficit when it comes to spending and taxes, because nobody wants to increase taxes to the point where we could get like $2 trillion in like more than $2 trillion in taxes. We do more than $2 trillion in spending, really. And that's a problem, meaning that if that doesn't happen, then we can't run a country and it shuts down. The whole thing shuts down because you can't take on more debt. Now, how does the country take on more debt? All right. The country takes on more debt by selling bonds. So basically what the government is telling the treasury is that it's not allowed to sell more bonds to take on more debt, which doesn't make any sense because America has grown since we were like a feudal slave state. Okay. We've grown since then. There are more people and more things going on since then, but we still try to keep on the same sort of government machinations from back then because they want to conserve and they're so cool, right? Because conserving is good no matter what you conserve, even the horrible things about the country. Sometimes they would like to conserve the horrible things about the country because sometimes they're horrible people. But listen, okay? Listen to this. It's not even this debt that you look at. The Republicans want you to think that all of this debt is like the government's fault, when in like more of an abstract way, it technically kind of true, but in more of an abstract way, it just doesn't make any sense. Here's the thing, okay? This isn't debt that just the government holds. It's debt that like the country holds, all right? This debt, like one in chat if you have any debt at all, okay? Any debt whatsoever. I'm talking credit card debt, medical debt, student loan debt, mortgage debt, car loan debt, any debt whatsoever that you have attached to your name, your social security number, you're holding debt, okay? I'm holding debt too. We are all holding debt. This is the country's debt, all of it, okay? All of this is, and this could have been better by doing things like, you know what would have reduced the amount of country debt? Maybe actually helping people after the Great Recession and the housing crisis. You know, that would have been crazy. What else would it be? Maybe helping people not be charged millions of dollars for life-saving medical care. What else? Possibly universities and community colleges being tuition free. That'd be remarkable. Making sure that wages keep up with inflation and the price of goods, so people are able to finally pay things off, and things don't, and prices don't spiral out of control. That would be crazy, wouldn't it? That'd be remarkable, wouldn't it? That would be so wild, but it didn't happen. But it never happened, and it won't be happening. Okay, so This is a self-inflicted stupid cringe that we levied onto ourselves that we have to deal with. Okay. With that being said, I did reference that there are $136 billion in cuts about. Where did those cuts come from? Now let's talk about something, okay? Let's listen to our good friend of the stream and Senate and House Majority Leader by just a couple of votes, Kevin McCarthy. What does Kevin have to say about the budget negotiations?
We couldn't talk about and look at places that we could have savings. We could only focus on 11% of the budget. But in that 11%, not only did we give you the greatest savings in American history, there's going to be people who are on welfare today that will no longer be on welfare, that they will find a job.
He wanted to speed race past that part, but he wanted to tell you a little bit about that. The people who are on welfare today are not going to be on welfare here very soon. They will find a job. They will starve, is what they are. He's taking food straight from the mouths of poor people, and that was the plan. Now, McCarthy said this, and then everybody was like, Biden, how could you do this to us? And then Biden said this.
President, what do you say to members of your own party who say you've made too many concessions in this deal?
They'll find I didn't.
They'll find I didn't. Bro, actually, he's getting old fast. He's getting like really old really fast. I can see it in him. Anyways, with that being said, that's a lie. He made a lot of concessions. Actually, how SNAP got added to the debt deal. followed up by, oh, they'll know very soon that I didn't make any concessions. Anyways, how SNAP got added to the debt deal. Let's read this for a second. Anyway, so what's this? Several rank and file Democrats told MA they were blindsided by the addition of a new work requirement on the country's leading anti-hunger program in the final debt limit deal, especially following several White House statements that they saw as Biden taking SNAP off of the negotiating table. But other House Democrats, including some in the leadership circle, have been worried about the potential of Biden agreeing to such concessions for weeks amid the GOP's demands that the measure be part of any deal to lift the debt ceiling. Two Democrats said they were ultimately not surprised about the new additional SNAP work requirements on adults aged 50 to 54 without children in their house. Beyond the current 18 to 49 age bracket, the other new restrictions on the program. The final deal sunsets the SNAP work requirement in 2030 and also includes new restrictions on emergency cash aid, known as temporary assistance for needy families, which has hit low-income families with children. Which will hit low-income families with children. So Biden, remember when he was like, I did not make too many concessions? Either he lied, or he thinks that low-income families with children and 50 to 54-year-olds are not something worthy of like that much consideration when going over these bills. Actually, we sunsetted SNAP. Well, we sunsetted SNAP for 50 to 54-year-olds in 7 years, which is simply just sick. And added new work requirements to make it more difficult to get on SNAP in the first place. Did the Republicans get what they wanted? No. Did the Democrats get what they wanted? Not really. But things kind of lurched into the rightward direction here, and it's not good, and it's bad, and it is the Democrats' fault for this type of bill. There were Democrats who were looking to push more. Biden decided that he wanted to, at the last moment, work with the Republicans here to push through more cuts to anti-hunger programs. Very cool. Thank you, Biden. Very interesting. New details in the debt limit bill, where these $136 billion will come from. Let's talk about it. The deal suspends the nation's $31.4 trillion borrowing limit until January 2025. Suspending the debt limit for a period of time is different than setting a new and fixed level. It essentially gives the Treasury Department the latitude to borrow as much money as it needs to pay the nation's bills during the time period, plus a few months after the limit is reached. That is different than the other bills that they passed. So they want to get some of that through. Some parts so there are a lot of parts that are unclear about what's going on in this bill and where this money will necessarily come from, but some parts are clear. The proposed military spending budget will increase to $886 billion. Oh man, we're creeping up towards that 1 trillion, boy. Are you guys excited for us to get that 1 trillion, that huge 1 trillion military budget? Oh man. Oh, it's gonna be so good. We do so much good with that. Here's one thing that's not talked about too much. A lot of the military budget does go to homeless veterans who need jobs, the VA, stuff like that. A lot of the budget goes to that. I think half of it actually goes to that, but you never, with the DOD and the Pentagon losing billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars every single year and just kind of vanishing. I'm not really sure that I can say that I have much confidence that and knowing what my local VA office looks like, I'm not sure if this money is really going to reach your average middle income or a poor veteran out there, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But that's cool, I guess. Legislative text suggests non-defense discretionary outside of veterans programs would shrink in 2024 to about last year's spending levels, but the White House officials say it's in the series of side deals with Republicans, including one related to funding the International Revenue Service, will allow actual funding to be closer to this year's level. Stuff like that, interesting stuff like that. And to the nasty part. The legislation would impose new work requirements on older Americans who receive food stamps through SNAP and who receive aid from the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. Nice. The bill imposes new work requirements on food stamps on adults 50 to 54 that don't have children in the home. Under the new law, those work requirements only apply to people ages 18 to 49. The age limit would be phased over the next 3 years, beginning in fiscal year 2023. This includes the technical change to finance assistance funding formula. So what's basically going to happen is that there's going to be more red tape and more bureaucracy in these government programs and more means testing. Hey, has anybody worked with these government program offices to get aid for you or your family before? Do you think that what those agencies need is more government is more government red tape and more bureaucracy? Because I would bet that would go absolutely crazy and do so much better for the American people. Yeah, what we really need right now is more government bureaucracy in our in our life-saving government assistance. Yeah, 100%. So true. So true. Pentagon audit. Oh, it failed it again. The Pentagon got audited last year, didn't it? And it failed it again. Like it did every time. The Pentagon has not passed a single audit in the history of America. For some reason, you really wonder where that money goes. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. I guess we'll look into it sometime. If the CIA doesn't take me out before, when I start searching. Opera GX, protect me from the CIA, please. I don't think it will. Still, the inclusion of the new work requirement has drawn outrage from advocates for the safety net assistance who say it punishes vulnerable adults who are in need of food. Yeah, you're punishing adults for not having children and punishing adults for being poor, which I think is quite sad. Not very cash money of you, Mr. Biden. Anyways, with that being said, during this whole debt bill negotiation fiasco is just crazy. One of the little mini stories in this whole thing is Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to pivot from being an insane Jewish space laser lady to being somebody who she thinks is respectable. Look at her pretending to be respectable here.
The members are reminded to abide by decorum of the House.
So she was given the seat by McCarthy. So after her little buddy and buying and eating his used chapstick and everything, McCarthy has started to give her more and more influential seats. So this hecking insane woman is now presiding over the House in place of McCarthy, to be his new lapdog, to fight off the far right of the caucus is just crazy. Yeah, she really thought now she's getting laughed at by everybody in the House. She's getting laughed at by every member, mostly Democrats, but every member for her being insane. Guys, I'm serious, guys? Please. They're cackling.
The House will be in order.
But they keep going. It won't stop. They keep laughing at her. They keep laughing. Oh, it's so good. So this is a nice little like mini thing here. Oh, there's this guy, Maxwell, right? The new Florida like 25-year-old, 26-year-old congressman. If I remember correctly, I think that's him. This blurry C-SPAN video. That on top of the fact is Marjorie's really trying to work into her new role of being McCarthy's attack dog. Her pivot from being like hard right Trumpist insane conspiracy theorist QAnon cretin to establishment pet is like such a wild turn. Look at this. Look at her attacking her like fellow like far right Republicans.
I don't know if I'm sure a bunch of you in here have children. You know how hard it is to get your kids to agree on what they want to eat for dinner? And then maybe your wife chimes in and she doesn't want that at all? Well, let me tell you,
Women, am I right?
Put our 222 Republican members of Congress in a room and try to get us all to agree on something, it is really, really hard. But then you compile on top of that the fact that we have to get what we agreed on past the Senate and the White House that is the opposite political party from us. Let me tell you, it is next to impossible. And that is the situation that we're in.
So true. So true. If that's too much, don't have a kid. No, they have to. Go cry about it. We all, I mean, come on. It's kind of like taking food away from poor people is kind of like, you know, going out to eat. Like the poor people who we took food from can't afford to do, you know, wacky, wild stuff like that. All right. And even in like something wild. OK, because like old habits die hard. Old habits die really, really hard. So here's another old habit of Bober talking about this. Now, listen, Bober missed the vote. If you look at the vote history on the debt ceiling bill and who voted, there are a couple of no votes. Sorry, there was a couple of people who didn't show up. So a couple of no shows. Bober is one of the no shows. And so people started asking her like, hey, Bober, you said that you really didn't like the bill. Why didn't you like vote against it? You weren't even there. And this is the video that she made to like kind of clear that up and save her own ass.
Hey everyone, I am back in Colorado, but let's talk about DC. No excuses. I was ticked off. They wouldn't let me do my job, so I didn't take the vote. Once again, Washington's power machine shoved a multi-trillion-dollar bill down our throats, refused to allow debate or amendments, disregarded everything we fought for in January to actually allow representatives to do their jobs, and instead, they served us up a crap sandwich. Call it a no-show protest, but I certainly let every one of my colleagues and the country know I was against this garbage of a bill and against bypassing the voice of each representative. Deals cut in the dark are why we're headed towards $36 trillion in debt, and I refuse to be a part of it.
Now, so here's a really incredible thing. She said that this was a weird deal in the dark. Here's what's wild. Maybe it was dark for her simply because she had her eyes closed. Maybe she was sleeping because they didn't kick her out of the deal or didn't let her do her job or whatever. It wasn't even a purposeful no vote, actually, because she was caught red-handed like a like goddamn Dick Dastardly putting explosive banana peels on the race for the other wacky racers. To slip over and getting caught. Like, oh, darn it. This is what happened, okay? Recording from outside of the House of Representatives on the night where they were voting for the bill. Look at who we found.
They just closed it. They closed it? Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it? That is what. Did you see that? Here, let me play it one more time for you, just in case.
They just closed it. They closed it? Yeah.
So you know who that is? That friend of the stream, Lauren Bober. She missed the vote on accident. It wasn't a protest. She was like sleeping or cheating on her ex-husband or like a dreaming about it or something. But it was not protesting. She was running like she was late to class, and like the teacher just locked the door and she's like, they grabbing the door like let me in. When she said she closed it, what they mean is they closed the vote. The vote is over. They called her name like a bunch of times. She wasn't there. And she was running up the stairs to go vote, but she wasn't able to. So now she has to save her own ass by being like, I actually meant to miss the vote because the vote is so bad. And so I protested against them by not voting at all and voting against it, even though I could have, to prove how much I didn't like it, but I just didn't vote at all. And I definitely did mean to do that, and it wasn't an accident, and I definitely wasn't sprinting after I fell asleep in my fucking car taking coke or something and missed my vote. That definitely didn't. I definitely wasn't people running into the House of Representatives asking if I could vote after they told me no. I promise you that certainly did not happen. I'm very good at my job. And here's the crazy thing. People people in the House of Representatives, they miss votes. Okay, it happens. You miss votes sometimes. You don't even have to vote. You could like not show up. Technically you don't even have to show up to the House of Representatives. There's a lot of people who didn't vote. I mean, just look at Cawthorn, that guy from South Carolina, in the wheelchair who got kicked out, who got caught in drag. Like, bro didn't vote for like the last like year and a half of his stay in office. All right, and he didn't get any reprimanded for it because technically you don't even have to show up. Oh, like as soon as you're voted in, like they pay you money and then that's kind of it. Really, you literally don't have to do anything else. Feinstein misvotes, Cawthorn misvotes. It happens. What doesn't happen is you lying about votes for clout because you forgot to actually show up. You could have just not mentioned it. You could have just like not voted. And then been like, this vote is cringe. And then would have been like, my vote wouldn't have mattered anyways because they were voting for it anyways because the other Republicans are also cringe. But she decided she wanted to really save her own ass here. And it is just honestly insane. But there's a lot of fighting inside the Republican Party as well. I mean, take a look at this. Matt Gaetz and his far right ilk just suffered a pretty rude awakening. This is an opinion piece basically about how the further right of the Republican establishment wanted to cut even more food and take even more food from the mouths of poor children and families across the country because funny number getting bigger, even though we're a bigger country, is more important than making sure that the people in this country are actually taken care of with the big number to them. So instead of actually like worrying about real human beings, they decided to worry about a fake number going up that doesn't really affect the lives of human beings in this country anyways. With that being said, after Gaetz and crew went on to lambast the Republican establishment as well as Biden and McCarthy, guess who it is? Guess who came back? That's right. It's Marjorie back to save her chapstick god from any accusations of being a rhino, because she's here to tell you that actually this is the hardest right, most epicest, rightist Trumpist plan to ever happen.
Obviously, this bill is more favorable to you than a clean debt ceiling increase. Is there a frustration that there are things left on the table that could have made a bigger dent in the deficit?
Oh, there's a lot of things that I would have liked to have seen happen. Of course. I don't fully support this bill. I voted for it for a few specific things. But the reality, and I live in reality, not conservative fantasy land.
Marjorie Taylor Greene lives in reality, not conservative fantasy land. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the workout lady, the Jewish space lasers QAnon lady. All right. The fucking insane Trump sycophant lady. She doesn't live in conservative fiction land anymore. Yeah,
I know fuck you lying. Why you always lying?
Oh my gosh. Stop hacking lying. That's all she's doing. It's crazy. She can't help herself. She can't help herself. Dude, bitch, I'm a dog, a wolf. Does McCarthy feed you and use chapstick treats or something? My goodness.
And the reality is that we barely control 1/2 of this house, which is only 1/3 of the federal government. So
gosh.
people that understand how to be successful and make deals that will actually work and are actually realistic, this is why we supported this.
Oh man, isn't this so creepy? The change in tune. It's like she was hit with a mind control ray or something. Who is this lady? This isn't Marjorie. Give her back. This is not 1/3 of the federal government. Shh. Listen, she's trying to be smart. She's trying to be smart. All right, I miss the old Marjorie. I miss the old Marjorie. Where is she? Bring her back, dude. Who is this lady? This is definitely not my Marjorie. Okay, this is definitely not the printout Facebook memes about Biden being owned by Xi Jinping on the Congress comically large printer. This meme is very real, Marjorie. This is not my Marjorie. Okay, this isn't my Satan lives in windmills Marjorie. All right, who is this lady? This makes me sick. What have you done to my queen? What have you done to her? Bring her back. Bring her back. This is insane. But listen here. I know in this video so far, you may have been a little discouraged by the Democrats kowtowing to the Republicans to take food from the mouths of poor people, but I've got some good news for you, okay? I lied. Even though those restrictions did go through, the CBO released a analysis recently that said that this actually would increase the number of people on SNAP instead of decreasing it, making sure that there will actually, at the end of the day, be more people taken care of by SNAP at the end of this deal after Biden used his incredible ballot sheet magic to make sure that would actually happen. An extra 78,000 people over the course of the next 5 years will be added to SNAP. Thank you, Biden. Another L. The Democrats really are your friends, guys. I lied. CBO's claim on SNAP work requirements is highly suspect. Let's read into why the CBO actually coming out and saying that more people are actually going to be a part of SNAP is probably a lie. Let's read on a little bit, okay? Able-bodied work requirement creates a time limit for nutrition assistance of a maximum of 3 months over a 3-year period for those who do not qualify. Research has shown that this policy is a crude tool that mostly kicks people off SNAP rather than promoting greater labor market participation. In other words, SNAP isn't designed to be a jobs program. Wow, you're telling me giving poor people food is not supposed to give poor people jobs? What? That's crazy. A 2021 study by the Urban Institute found that time limits, since their reinstatement in 2016 after a temporary freeze during the Great Recession, did not lead to an increase in job employment among SNAP participants. Instead, work requirements strained low-income people who would otherwise qualify based on their income levels from accessing the program. So basically what the CBO is doing is making an assumption and scoring the food aid provisions, which fail to take account for the reality of the implementation of these policies. They instead argue that the work requirement on older Americans would lead to the largest restrictions on SNAP since the welfare reform in 1996, while the exemptions will fail to account for long-standing barriers, including disadvantaged populations in SNAP. Without additional funding for the withered administrative capacity at the state and local agencies, many of these groups will likely not be able to participate. One person who works with impoverished Americans says, "We have far more certainty about the impacts that this will cause in the bill rather than the benefit that we could get from it and people being added to it." So thank you, CBO, for giving false hope to people. Wow, that's so cool, dude. Very interesting. The three groups that would receive these exemptions from the work requirement are seen by the advocacy community as the most difficult to identify population level and get assistance from. Oh my goodness, I can't read apparently. The three groups that would receive exemptions from the work requirements are seen by the advocacy community as the most difficult to identify at the population level and get assistance from outreach services. Though the challenge is especially pronounced for the homeless individuals, many of the same burdens apply to veterans or people in foster care, since both groups often have a higher chance of losing housing. Exemptions to rules rather than changing the rules themselves cause greater administrative challenges, basically meaning that there's going to be more bureaucracy and more government red tape and more waiting times between you and making sure that you can eat, which could add days, hours, days, weeks, months to people getting their insurance for like food security, which is not good, which isn't them technically being kicked off of SNAP, but practically being kicked off of SNAP and practically not being able to reach a lot of these assistance programs that they would have been able to reach before this. Pramila Jayapal actually came out and said that she noticed that in a conference call on Tuesday that exempt individuals would have to go through more bureaucracy, red tape in order to qualify, which is honestly a huge problem. And people who are chronically homeless will also have a more difficult time getting food, which I think in a civilized society is something we, wait for it, shouldn't do. We should give poor people food and not have them jump through flaming hoops to be able to eat today. Actually, we should be doing things to get them off of the street and not doing things to keep them there. Actually, thank you, Democrats. Incredibly interesting and wildly cool. And now all of this at the end of the day, you may be wondering once again, what's the point of this? All of this at the end of the day is from the fact that we have to vote for the budget all the time to bureaucracy and red tape and waiting times and means testing and austerity and all these types of things. All of these come together as simply tools for the Republican Party. And these tools are simply to inflict suffering on the poor. That's the point. They want to inflict more suffering onto the poor, because in the Republican framework, and they're not, a lot of people stop as in they're just demons who want to in like a doom game, who simply want to make the world worse to make the world worse. They actually have like a method to their madness. I don't think it's a very like good method, but it is one. Basically what it is them thinking that the more hardship somebody goes through, basically the more likely it is that they're going to be that this will be like the fire lit under them. This is going to be the boot in the seat of their pants to get them right as rain and working again. That doesn't happen. These people are 50 and 54. They probably work their entire lives. The fact that they're poor isn't because isn't because they don't want to work. They're 54. The likelihood of them not being able to really work is actually pretty high at this point in time in their life. Like the vast majority of their, I don't want to say the vast majority of their life is over, but they're looking at the like, midday to sunset era of their life. They're not really prepared to work the same way like a 24 to 30-year-old is, really. It just doesn't make any sense. It's just ridiculous. It's just more ways for them to inflict cruelty onto the poor, because when they think that when they inflict cruelty onto those people, it makes them more likely to go and get jobs. And we all know that that's not true. It doesn't increase their likelihood of being employed. It increases their likelihood of dying and suffering. And that's the real point. And that's really why we have to stop them. It's hard to understand these people if you just think that they're simply evil. They're not. The things that they do, I think, can be, classified as evil sometimes, but they're not just evil. They're evil for, a cause. They're not like a cataclysm in the same way as just like a tornado or a natural disaster. They can be stopped, and they will be stopped, because me and you will put in the work to make that happen. Isn't that right, chat? Isn't that right? But the one thing that, if you take anything from this video, remember, Democrats are not your friends. They're not here to help you, and they will not save us from bad things happening. They can help, and a lot of times they'll hurt. They can be they are many times insincere and also unreliable allies in good fights, but they're not going to be the ones spearheading that. They're the cautious people taking up, filling in spaces that were made for them by the people who are trailblazing, by the people who take those risks to make the world a better place. That's who they are. It's our job to actually make it there first. And so they can come up and actually start to push through laws to make things better. But we can't rely on them to make the world a better place. They're simply politicians at the end of the day, and they're not your friends. Come here. Come here. Oh. Hi. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.